this will be huge, I think, for a personal goal of mine, which is to bring back a particular piece of American neckwear.
Yeah. So we'll introduce that a little bit later.
I don't want to give it all away.
So are you perceiving this as like the ground zero for a movement?
I am. Yes,
Okay.
I am. That's exactly how I perceive it.
Interesting. Interesting. Well, hey, all I can say is I cannot wait to star in the documentary.
Yeah.
I was there for the
first
interview.
moment.
Yeah.
It was that face.
I knew when I was in that room, you could feel the energy, right? Like, there was so much creativity coming from Evan that I was like, this is somebody who's going to change the world. It's just that simple.
Totally.
Man. So, Evan.
Yes.
I feel like we have to introduce you up front.
Sure.
Yes.
Makes sense. Proprietor, owner, founder? What's your
baby.
primary
I'm the
title?
owner of Gage Goods.
Of Gage Goods.
Yes.
So I sort of want to actually start off because I feel like it's a good, pretty straightforward way to kind of get our feet in on this. The origin of the organization, the origin of the company, because it's, I think, a really cool story.
Yeah. It is.
And humble too.
Because it was largely just an accident. After I graduated from college, I lived in Turkey for a year.
Yeah.
I went to grad school, and
did you go to grad school in Turkey, or did you go to Turkey for a year and come back to grad
I went to Turkey for a year, and then came back, taught for 2 years, then went to graduate school, where I partially took classes and partially applied for every single grant that I could get. Because why not, baby?
Exactly.
A little international travel.
Yeah. I mean, what else is grad school for?
Right.
Wait, so do you have a graduate degree?
I do. Yes.
Okay.
I'm a master in
Shad was just
theological
about to
studies.
Master in theological studies.
From the University of Notre Dame.
So you applied so that you could take trips to, the not technically Mideast.
I just wanted to go back and hang out. What is Turkey considered? It's one of two countries, be both European, 3% of it is in Europe, 97% in Asia.
Yet they really want to be there. They really want to be in the EU so bad.
Totally, they go back and forth.
Yeah.
So while I was there, I studied Byzantine material culture. The thing I was really interested in is how you could look at an archaeological site and of, say, like a 5th century church. And then you could find a sermon that was preached there. And if you read both of those together, you would find that there'd be very interesting things that would happen.
Yeah.
This is pretty niche. What practically that meant was that I had to go to Turkey and know Turkish, right?
Yeah.
And so I would...
How's your Turkish right now? Is it still good?
It's pretty good. I mean,
you can order a coffee.
I could order a coffee.
Otherwise, you couldn't even be in Turkey.
Right, exactly. Or I can better respond to the question, would you like a coffee? Because the good people of Turkey are offering coffees all the time.
Yes.
So I was there, and I found that one way to practice my Turkish was to talk to rug dealers because they're willing to oblige.
Yeah.
Because it's financially, makes a lot of sense for them to talk to foreigners to try to negotiate and get you to buy something.
I just wanted to learn about rugs.
Yeah.
I just wanted to practice Turkish. And there were these objects. Tell me where's this from?
You're doing
where's that from?
You're doing language 101 where you're like, describe adjectives. Tell me where.
Absolutely.
From,
and not
name.
paying for a tutor. But the joke is on me because by the end, there was one summer in particular where I was working on this, and by the end of that summer, I knew so much about rugs that people thought I was like a real rug dealer.
Yeah.
Well,
I imagine that when you're taking Turkish in a classroom, thread count or
come up. Not per square inch. Just So they were like, oh, this guy really seems to know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And this is a helpful tip for those of you who may be interested in buying a Turkish rug overseas. What they do is offer you a series of tests. So the very first moment you walk in is the first test.
Yeah.
And they'll offer you black tea. It has nothing to do even with the rug. They'll offer you black tea or what they call the traditional apple tea.
And you take the apple tea, I imagine.
And if you take the apple tea, which is not in fact traditional, but rather just hot Kool-Aid, then they know, okay, this is like a tourist. They don't know.
Yeah.
So this is basically a test to evaluate whether or not you're a sucker, right? Like if they're going to give you the fake rug. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So then they'll roll one out, and it'll be from Mashhad. but they'll say it's from somewhere else. It's
Yeah.
Tabriz rug.
Yeah.
And if you don't correct them, then they know. And they just kind of evaluate.
Yeah.
And so I began to determine the differences only because I would ask people, where's this rug from? How do you know? And then I'd go to the next guy and be like, you say this rug from Tabriz. I think no. So by accident, these guys thought I was like actually a real dealer and began to give me wholesale prices if I would buy in bulk. And I did.
Yeah.
And then I was selling Turkish rugs as a way to procrastinate on my graduate school papers.
Yes.
So, you know.
Yes. And so you would primarily just to Americans, right? You're not trying to work anywhere in the local market at all. You're just importing, exporting.
Yeah.
So how does one legally, I guess, and if this is a rocky road, that you feel free to correct me on this, but how do you acquire large quantity, move it to America, and sell it at profit effectively?
Yeah.
Right. Are they doing the shipping? Are you doing the shipping yourself? Is it all going into your carry-on?
No. Well, originally,
Yes. For the towels, I imagine.
Some of the early ones I did. I went to Turkey right before formally founding the company in the summer of 2019.
Yeah.
And I was there with I was sort of chaperoning, maybe. I was like staying with a bunch of students.
Yeah.
And I would go out on the weekends and just shop around and go to the antique markets and pick up rugs, and then they carried them back for me. That was dubiously
Your first employee.
I don't know if that
It was in Turkey, so there were no laws. You could do whatever.
I hope. I don't know. What I do actually is now I work with a guy in the country. And this is one of the places where I think it's really cool. I taught English when I was living in Turkey. And there was one kid who was like really entrepreneurially minded, really, really, really hard worker. Just like a good, funny, cool guy.
Yeah.
From the Kurdish part of Turkey, so from a part of Turkey that is seen as kind of a backwater.
Well, a very controversial part of Turkey.
Right. So I contacted this kid, and we started working together. And he would do a lot of groundwork and try to figure out like who to source from, travel around and look at the different places where rugs and eventually towels are being manufactured or where they're being stored.
Yeah.
And deal with a lot of the logistical things there. And that's also, we've got a really cool system worked out because as far as any of the rug sellers in Turkey know, these rugs are being sold to a Turkish guy. So the prices,
which makes sense. Most foreign countries or even America does the same thing.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So that's nice because then I don't know, I pay Turkish lira for them.
Yeah.
So
quick question then. What's dollar to lira right now?
Last I checked, it was $1 bought 18 Turkish lira.
Oh, okay.
And that.
So you're doing well.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We could get into this if you want to because Islamic law has a lot to say about usury.
Yes.
And
that is a. I'm actually curious about that.
And Christian law.
Yes.
Couldn't be a usurer and a Christian up to the 1800s.
Yes.
So,
something to be now.
Maybe I think about that every time I swipe that credit card.
Yeah.
There's been runaway inflation, but the president has refused to raise interest rates to cool the market down to keep inflation in check. And for that reason, the U.S. dollar buys a whole lot of Turkish lira, baby. And
that means a whole lot of rugs.
Right.
And a whole lot of raisins, I guess.
Yeah. Rugs, hazelnuts.
Yeah.
Okay. I had a hazelnut coffee today.
There you go.
Could have come through a dealer just like you.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's super, super, super complicated. The whole process of figuring out how to do this at scale was incredibly hard.
Yeah. And then primarily you're kind of working through a website, right? And I guess the big question I have as somebody who owns a business himself, very different, but you're retail, I'm trade, I guess. But how do you you have your website, you have basic marketing, a lot of it's word of mouth, right? And I heard about your stuff from just friends and people I knew kind of in the Hillsville alum sphere and et cetera. But how do you get the sales you need in order to secure further product? Because I imagine you're selling at profit, and I imagine it's a pretty good profit considering what you're buying in Turkey, moving to America. A lot of costs involved in that. But where are you acquiring your clientele as your primary?
Well, yeah. Where do they?
They just sort of appear. You just sell rugs.
With a man and a woman.
Yeah. No, I think a lot of it. Here's where I hope a lot of it comes from.
Yeah.
I hope it comes from a vague parasociality by way of my Instagram account because I spent way too much time writing these very involved captions. But I think it's mostly people.
They are very involved, I will say.
Yeah, there's a lot of imagined dialogue. But I think. Yeah, there's word of mouth, which is a lot.
Yeah.
Instagram is my primary sort of like funnel, and I've begun hosting warehouse sales.
Nice.
So I have a warehouse in South Bend now, and I once a month thereabout open it up, and people come in and shop the warehouse sale, and that's been really cool because I've been able to meet all these people who follow me on the internet, and guys have driven in from like Chicago or Cincinnati. Which means I guess I have a roughly 4 hour.
I really need
range.
a floor piece that has a lion on it.
Yeah, no, really.
3 hours of driving for that.
It's really kind of cool. Like people feel that they've got like a relationship, and we can have one. What has been so fun about rugs in particular is you begin to see people when you see people's tastes and you know enough about the material goods that they're interested in, you can begin to sort of pinpoint, most clients, if they buy more than one rug, they buy 2 rugs that'll be from within a 100-mile radius, like often from the exact same city.
Oh, yeah, because of the local styles, right?
Exactly. And it's cool to get to know.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I get to know the people who made the rugs just by looking at the rugs and unwrapping them. And every single rug has an interesting story.
Yeah.
But then you get to also know the people that buy the rugs, simply because
because they buy them.
A, they're there, or B, even anonymous people on the internet. I can look back and be like, oh, you made 3 purchases, and I'll look at the rugs and be like, cool,
okay, I get you. I understand.
Totally.
I'm imagining your living room right now.
Exactly. Or going to clients' houses, and they'll be like, all right, so I live in this mid-century modern house. What kind of rug should I get? And it's very fun to be able to talk, to work with people that are eager to make their space human, I guess.
Interesting.
So a weird offside. I have to ask this question directly to you.
Okay.
Because so I am a Gage good purchaser. I don't know if you've seen so, but I own some of your Turkish towels.
Yeah.
And I've tried and I've failed in some circumstances. Sometimes it's worked. Explain to the audience how
I'm in the same situation because I do have Turkish towels.
How does one make a Turkish towel work properly?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So let me begin with the invention of what we call terry cloth.
Terry cloth.
Terry cloth.
Named
You're
after
familiar?
Terry?
Yeah.
Named after a Terry? I don't know. No, but this is
I
interesting.
don't trust a Terry.
Bear in mind, me neither, but bear in mind the concept of the name of the terry cloth towel, right?
Yeah.
So terry cloth is what toweling is made of now.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of loops, effectively, just a whole bunch of loops.
And I imagine it's synthetic primarily, right?
It can usually cotton.
Oh, okay.
But a terry cloth towel, the idea is with all those loops, there's extra surface area.
Yes.
And with all that
for soaking additional moisture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, how was the terry cloth towel invented, gentle listener?
You sitting there drinking your bourbon by the fireside.
I know. You want to know.
Yeah, I imagine. Okay, here's the thing.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe they were inventing Velcro, and then they took it a step further.
They were like, what if we did only one of these bad boys?
Yes,
only
exactly.
one side.
One half.
Yeah.
And it's twice the loop.
Toweling was an accident.
Yeah.
They were just trying to figure out how to attach things.
Yeah.
And detach things from those attached things quickly.
Hold on a second. This does absorb pretty well.
All right. Whoa.
I imagine that's not the case. All right.
No, yeah. So it was so around the turn of the 20th century, the late 19th century, indoor plumbing was coming back in style in the Anglophone world.
Yeah.
And so obviously toweling was becoming more of a felt need. Yeah. So there were these industrialists based in the United Kingdom who...
And which industrialists, for the most part, United Kingdom.
Yeah, right.
In the U.S., the rest,
right.
Kingdom, yes.
And what they did was look at, so where in the world are people regularly bathing? That was Turkey, where the Turks kind of inherited the Roman bath culture and never stopped, right? So the hammam, the Turkish bath, is really just kind of an updated Roman bath.
Yeah.
So there were always towels in use there. So these English industrialists found these high-quality towels from Turkish hammams and looked at them under a microscope.
Yeah.
And found that these old, super absorbent Turkish towels made loops. Like, the older they got, the more the yarn degraded. And as the yarn degraded, it formed these kinds of, like...
So you're saying it's based on use?
Well, yeah.
It's like a nice pair of Doc Martens or cowboy boots, right? You just kind of have to use them.
Totally. So, like a brand, the first time you use a Turkish towel, that is the least absorbent it will ever be, right?
And let me tell you, I know that from personal experience.
I tell people, like, you will feel like I've lied to you.
Yeah.
The first time you use this, you'll think that I'm just like full of it because it doesn't dry you off.
Yeah.
But when I tested the first prototype Turkish towel, I was
the first prototype Turkish towel.
There was this loom. We were like gonna lock it down, and I was like, "Hey, well,
you were like in the 16th century. You were sitting there like, all right, guys.
Yeah.
You know what? I'll take it for a spin.
Well,
It'll be me.
okay, Strabo, the ancient historian, did cite the modern Denizli as growing some of the finest cotton in the world.
Okay, yeah.
Denizli cotton is still the cotton used for Turkish towels.
And the ones that you would sell.
Exactly. Because it's gotten extremely... this is stuff that they did not teach me in graduate school. A long staple cotton is any cotton longer than 1.25 inches a strand, right?
Yeah.
Only 3% of the cotton produced in the world is that long.
Okay.
It's only produced in 3 or 4 places, one of them being Denizli.
Okay.
But basically,
and none of those are in North America, I imagine.
Yeah. They're an island off of South Carolina.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
there we
one
go.
of the
My
places.
bad. Sorry.
Hey, yeah. Is it North America, though?
Yeah.
So anyway, there's really long cotton. If you've got this really long cotton, then that cotton can degrade.
Yeah.
And the yarn that you make can degrade without threatening sort of the structural integrity of the strand. So the idea with the Turkish towel is the more you use it, the more it begins to lightly unfurl and the more absorbent it becomes.
Yeah.
So I've got 2 questions for you.
Yeah.
First, how long does it take for that to happen on average? And second, is there any way to expedite that process?
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. This is great. Yeah. So some clients told me what they do is leave their Turkish towel in a bucket of water in a bathtub all night, like right after buying it. What I did, I didn't believe a little. I kind of felt when I first encountered Turkish towels, I didn't know any of the history.
Yeah.
Despite having gone to a hammam weekly for like a year.
Yeah.
Just felt.
Which I feel like we got to talk about hammams. I'm very interested in that. But
incredible experience.
Yeah.
It's like a human car wash, you know.
Yeah.
My shower didn't work when I lived in Turkey, and I didn't know the words to fix it. So I just went to the public baths and had a huge Anatolian man scrub me down twice a week.
Yeah. He's probably much more thorough than you would be. There's spots on your back you can't reach.
Absolutely. Yeah. Think about it.
Yeah.
They have these special gloves.
Yeah.
Anyway, it gets pretty personal.
Yeah. It's like a cat's tongue. You imagine.
That's what I say. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is. It's a cat's tongue.
Well, it's like those cat's gloves that you could buy so that you could I don't know. This is weird. I would never do this with my cat, but you can interface with your cat by scratching it with a special glove. I imagine something similar.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's if you took like sandpaper and a cat's tongue and you crossbred them in a glove form, it would constitute what these guys put on to scrub you. And when you stand up,
rough, you mean?
It's rough. But what's amazing? Mark Twain went to a hammam.
Okay. Yeah.
And he reported
something pithy, I imagine.
Something incredible. Well, he described when you stand up after getting scrubbed with one of these. You look and you see the detritus of your own body.
Yeah.
And he called it black. He described it as black macaroni, and that is it. Like macaroni-sized bits of skin are exfoliated, and
oh my gosh,
you see your outline. It's cool.
Wow.
You touch yourself, you're like, damn. like a baby's bottom. I've never been this clean.
Oh gosh, where does one find one of these guys?
Right? I mean, try to import one of those.
Yeah, exactly. I was talking about
Gage
the amount of money
goods,
you'd make off
primarily.
exporting.
Yeah, it's a different kind of good, but wow.
A guy with a awesome mustache.
Yes.
Courtesy
yes.
of Gage goods.
Yeah. Who's
Yeah.
just chain smoked 9 cigarettes.
Yeah, well, so do they smoke like a really specific brand in Turkey, or is it just really bad cigarettes? I have a friend who lived in Turkey or lived in Turkey briefly, and he was telling me they smoke terrible cigarettes in Turkey.
Yeah, well, I think they're super low potency.
Oh,
is the
okay.
thing. Like our cigarettes have a lot more nicotine, so you got to
Yeah.
smoke a lot more in order to get the same sort of buzz.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of smoking then to achieve that buzz.
Yeah, that's a lot of smoking.
Well, then why not just use the hookah? Because that stuff that goes straight to your brain.
Totally.
That's intense.
Yeah. Why not both?
Yeah.
Yeah.
People say,
Why can't you just double fist it?
yeah.
Alternate.
I imagine there is Turkish men who do so. I imagine.
Yeah.
Okay, so the
Well,
show.
I got a quick question before
Yeah.
we move on from the Turkish bath.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
The scrubbing guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is this a certain brand of individual?
Yeah.
Like I can't imagine standing
Like, if you
in
were
a
to- if you were to
steaming bath
go-
for 7 hours.
If you were to
Yeah,
go to a cafe,
yeah,
could you
yeah.
look at a dude and say, that guy scrubs?
Yeah. Well, you couldn't go to the cafe because he's not in the cafe, baby.
Yeah.
You know?
He's scrubbing it. Yeah.
You know what's crazy is that it's a familial thing. There's actually like
okay.
a city in Turkey that a lot of the guys who do this come from. So like
Okay.
you do it with your dad, and then you learn how to do it, and you go.
Yeah.
So it's from Tokat, where I was living, is the place
Wow.
that a lot of these guys come from.
Yeah.
So as you might imagine, the Turkish baths in my host city were
Pretty good.
yeah, and the guys, it's really very cool because they have this knowledge of the human body born out of standing in a steamy bath for 7 hours, right?
Yeah.
Like, and just touching human bodies in a totally workmanlike way.
Yeah.
So they have this
entirely industrial.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
It's a processing line.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I mean, you are getting your butt cheeks scraped by a stranger,
Yeah.
but it could not be any less sort of like.
I feel like there's a certain American thing sometimes where people will look at something like a Korean bath or a Turkish bath and be like, "What? Like that's weird." You know, it's. But when you're at a place like that, you know, you're just like, "Oh, this is just normal." Like,
Yeah.
we don't have to add any sort of extra level of
Right.
freakishness to it, especially in when it's like same sex or et cetera, where it's like, no, this is just a thing that we do.
Right.
We're here and we're naked.
Yeah.
And we're getting scrubbed.
Yeah, and that's it. How else are we supposed to get clean?
Yeah.
You expect me to do this to myself? Yeah. No.
Disgusting.
Yeah. Yeah. But
okay,
so they tend to be wiry.
Yeah.
Wiry dudes.
Interesting. I would have. I for some
imagine the
reason,
heavy
my
set
mind's
guy.
eye. Yeah. Heavy set, bulky men.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard to say. You know, it can be. Well, there is a lot of physical activity. They put you on a marble slab after they've done the scraping, and then they kind of they soap you up, and then kind of whirl you around, and often do a massage thing.
Yeah.
And it's cool because these are not masseuses; they're just people who know human bodies.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can get pretty intense.
Well, they invented oil wrestling, so
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
they're very much about slipping and sliding.
Totally. And when you're in a soaped up marble slab, you are slipping and sliding.
It's just that simple.
Yeah.
Okay, so quick question before I forget.
Yeah.
Do you feel as though in a Turkish bath, as a foreigner, you were treated differently than the Turkish national?
I think almost universally in Turkey, Turks went out of their way to treat me better.
Interesting.
Totally.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Totally.
That
I mean,
makes sense.
I was told.
They're like one of those ambassador countries where they're trying to be
I
put on a good show.
I love the people. I mean, I
Yeah.
really, really love the people of Turkey because I think they were. Many of the people that I encountered were nervous that someone else in Turkey would be mean to me, and they wanted to overcompensate. I mean, it was really gorgeous. I don't know.
Yeah.
The line that I heard over and over was like, "Hey, remember this. People like each other, and governments make us fight." And I don't know. As an inner libertarian, I was a little like, "Yeah, maybe." Yeah. No,
You're right. What are borders?
but universally, universally, I remember those kids that were chaperoning. There was one female, 2 males. We all went to a Turkish bath.
Yeah.
And the owner of the Turkish bath, we didn't even think about that being a potentially dubious situation. But the owner was like, "We need to make sure that she's totally taken care of. These are not mixed sex." She was the only person on the other side of the Turkish bath.
Yeah.
But
I was actually going to ask that whether or not there's like separate entrances for women and men.
or different times that you can go.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And I imagine, as an Islamic country, they're very active in enforcing that.
Yeah.
Are the scrubbers separated by gender? Are there male scrubbers and female scrubbers?
They're female scrubbers.
Okay.
Yeah, they're
All
female
right.
scrubbers. And I hear on the women's side it's a lot more fun. I hear there's a lot more dancing and a lot more. I've heard
A lot
stories.
more wine, you know.
Yeah. No, really. I think that you get the family together. It's like a sort of a pre-marriage thing. People go in there, they hang out, they have fruit plates.
Nice.
If I'm translating the word right, it's fruit plate.
Who knows the context?
I don't really know.
Oh man,
It's pretty mysterious.
A lot of
And
figs.
A lot of the Turkish gals who I'm friends with are just be like, yeah, you don't know what goes on over there. It could be anything.
Yeah. There's. I think in America we have a certain level of that with the women's bathroom.
Yeah, right.
Like sometimes you would hear you'd hear things where it's like, oh, they have a couch in there. And you're
Right.
like, what?
Yeah, Gage Goods is in an old and abandoned, basically, factory.
Yeah.
And there's nobody there, let alone anyone using the women's bathroom. So I have maybe taken upon myself to investigate, and it was nicer.
Yeah.
I'll just say it's nicer.
Just objectively.
Yeah. I imagine, in situations like that, it certainly is. It certainly is. Okay, so technically the show's about something.
Okay.
Yes.
That's
Okay.
right,
Okay.
that's right,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes,
I
yeah,
run
yeah.
a company,
Yes,
Gage Goods.
yes,
We sell
yes,
towels,
yes.
we sell rugs.
Okay.
Neither of those things
But
are
I'm
my
saying,
hobbies.
so we're called Monomaniacs for a reason. We
Yeah.
have people come in, talk about the thing that they're interested in right now, the thing that they're passionate about, something they want to maybe profligate. In your case,
Create an actual movement. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. So, what exactly is your white whale right now?
Okay, yeah. So what this is something that started totally through accident. Largely because of the rug company. It is tumbling rocks.
Okay.
I love to tumble rocks. I have
Yes.
a lot of rock tumblers running right now.
Okay. Evan, I want you to tell me.
Yeah.
Give me a number. How many rock tumblers do you have in your place of work and home combined?
Okay, that's a good question because it could be rephrased as how many barrels of tumbling rocks you
Sorry,
currently
I don't know the
have.
nomenclature of a
No,
tumbler.
no.
Okay.
Because I've got several tumblers with multiple barrels, right? So the Lortune 33B, for instance, often
All right, we're
considered
getting
the gold
some
standard of the rock tumbling world. It can have has two barrels, so you can have rocks in stage 1 and rocks in stage 4 running at the same time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Imagine
okay.
the amount of time that saves. Just think about that.
Well, a tremendous amount of time. So, okay, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6 barrels.
Okay.
And then I also have a vibratory rock tumbler. Well, what I thought was a vibratory rock tumbler that was not, in fact, a vibratory rock tumbler.
You guys sold a false bill of goods?
Yeah. Well, I should have.
You should be candy.
I should have read the
with
instructions.
Turkish merchants.
I should have read the instructions. Vibratory. That kind of vibratory tumbler is specifically for shell casings. If you put water and rocks in it, it will explode upon $1,000 Turkish rug.
Nice.
Something. Yeah. It was,
Yeah, interesting. Huh, fun.
These are you know what? I'm glad I learned it.
This is called owning a business.
Yeah, totally. Being like, damn, that's my life savings. Yeah. It's all right. It's all right. I shouldn't have put that rug there anyway.
Yeah. Listen, my professional life and my hobby life have just collided in a terrible way.
Absolutely.
Well, actually, so from what Jane told me,
Yeah.
is that the line is sort of blurred.
Yeah.
Right? So part of your business now is the rock tumbling.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the two are connected, but only kind of accidentally or strangely. Like when I was just starting the company, there came to be a point. I was living in a basement during graduate school.
Yeah, as you do.
Yeah, as you do. And
That's a terrible, terrible place to live.
it's a hard place to live, especially when you are cohabitating with 20 to 30 Turkish rugs.
Living in sin with 20 to 30 Turkish rugs.
Every night I had to pole vault over these rugs to get into my bed.
Yeah.
And I really
I have a
needed-
cold all the time. Why?
What's going on? So I had these rugs, and I needed a place to rent, but I didn't have enough money to rent a formal commercial space.
Yeah.
But there was a maker's space that if you were an artist,
Yeah.
you could rent a 8x7 studio for $150 a month.
Nothing.
That was in my budget.
Yeah.
But I was not
An artist.
Technically.
I mean, hey, honestly,
Look, an artist of the mind, baby. But
let's talk about the spoken word as an art form.
Yeah.
But I wasn't making a damn thing. No.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
totally.
yeah.
I wasn't making anything. So
Yeah.
I rented this space out.
Yeah.
And filled it with my rugs. Got the rugs out of my house into this tiny little cell. But I kind of felt that the other artists could just sense that I was a big fraud, and I felt that I needed to find some way to
Be an artist.
establish myself
Yeah,
as the
exactly.
artistic genius.
Assert your dominance.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
So-
show them to be the alpha that you are.
Right. Yeah. There was one rock tumbler
Yeah.
in this makerspace,
And you started tumbling
and I
rocks.
started tumbling rocks. What's that noise coming from the studio? That's a rock tumbler. That guy tumbles rocks.
So in my mind,
Yeah.
rock tumbling is more of a folk art, sort
Okay,
of, kind
yeah.
of. Like in my mind, rock tumbling is the sort of thing that you hear about when you're like on a field trip.
Yeah.
Or you're
Very-
or you're like in the American Southwest, right? They really like rock tumbling in the American Southwest.
Yeah,
we
they
spent
do.
a couple of years in Arizona. I feel like every time I went somewhere, they're like, "Oh, you can also buy our rocks."
Yeah. They
So
love rocks down there. Yeah. And I love their
that's the
rocks.
thing about them. They love rocks.
Evan,
So
he likes his rocks down there.
I've said it before. I'll say it again.
say it again. So you're like, okay, I got. So you show up to
Well-
the space and there's already a rock tumbler.
There's a rock tumbler
So
there.
the previous artiste.
And I figure it's loud, it's noisy,
Yes.
and everyone will know that I'm using it because they won't be able to use it. So I figure
Yeah.
it's a great way to really establish I really am.
Yeah, I really am using it. I am making something smooth.
Right.
Yes.
Something's going to be so smooth.
Totally.
Yeah.
And sometimes people have to ask me, like, hey, we're polishing this brass. Can you take your rocks out? And that only, I feel, reestablishes my credentials
Yeah.
as a rock tumbler.
Yeah, because they're approaching you, right? They're kneeling down and bowing and saying, "Sir, do you mind relinquishing your rock tumbler?" Right,
Yeah, I suppose I can
Yeah.
for an afternoon.
Thank you, sir.
But then, what I realized though, so that worked for a month. You
Yeah.
know, you do 1 week on coarse grit, 1 on the next level, 1 on the pre-polish, 1 on the polish.
Yeah.
But after 1 month, I realized like, okay, well, this I can start a new batch of rocks, and I did. But now I had all these polished rocks,
And they're just in buckets.
and
Just Home Depot buckets.
what do you do? And I was still nervous about being an artist. I was like, I gotta find some way
Yeah.
to somehow legitimate my creation of these rocks.
Yeah.
And so we got on eBay, and there was a store in the Southwest that was going out of business, a jewelry making store that was going out of business, and they were selling all their bolo tie making materials.
Yeah.
So the clasp, the leather straps.
Okay, so I got to ask you. So
Yeah.
it's Southwest is where they were running out of business,
Right.
You were. How did you even find out that this was happening?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I've been on
really don't
eBay.
know.
I've been on eBay a lot recently. You find things that you
I
can't
think
even
I was
imagine.
just clicking around.
Yeah. And you were like, oh, it was like that freaking hangover calculation scene. You got math equations in your head. You're like, wait a second. Bolo tie material, my tumbled rocks. Put it
I have a
together.
hot glue gun. I have a hot glue gun.
I could do this now. No, actually, I remember now how the idea came to me. I was at the time working part-time at Notre Dame,
Yeah.
and I had to wear a tie to work. And didn't really want to follow. It was strange. It was very...
Yeah.
And I wanted to follow the letter, but not
the spirit of the law.
No,
did not
I wanted to
include-
follow the letter, but not the spirit,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I got on eBay and I bid on what I thought was 1 bolo tie, but it was a
Yeah.
lot of 48 bolo ties. And then I bought all 48 bolo ties to my office, and I would
Yeah.
just walk in and pop on a bolo tie.
Yeah.
And I began to develop an aesthetic affection for the bolo tie
Yeah.
as both concept and execution.
Which is great because I'm going to be upfront with you right now. As somebody who has decided that my college style, what I developed, and a lot of people will establish what they want to look like in college, and they just kind of ride with it for the rest of their life. Right. I've decided that I sort of want to start stepping my toes into the style of the American Southwest.
Yeah.
And
it's a powerful
look.
Talk about alpha, right?
Yes.
we were saying that. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
go,
Honestly, if you walk into a room and you got a bolo tie, people will be like, "What the hell?
absolutely.
What is going on?
Yeah,
This guy is above us all."
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
I have
So much more
never-
confidence.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the power I began to accidentally experience
Yeah.
at my job wearing the bolo.
Yeah.
And then
All of a sudden, I got all the promotions I wanted.
Things just started falling in my lap. And with all that extra time that you're not spending tying a tie, you can do.
You could start a small business.
Absolutely. It was incredible. Yeah. So there I was, and I think I had all these tumbled rocks, and I was wearing bolo ties at work, and I think I was like, I should see if I can find bolo
intersection.
making.
Yes.
And it was that. Then I found the store that was shutting down. I bought it all. I shipped it there, and I would very publicly make bolo ties at the makerspace.
I imagine. Okay. I'm not gonna lie. If I was in the makerspace and I was a sculptor, and I showed up, I was like, "What the hell is with these arts and crafts?"
Yeah, they. I learned.
Can you
pretty
even
late.
imagine the amount of statues I could fit in that space? That guy over there is making bolo ties.
Making bolo ties
at a
and
desk.
little do they know, it's just full of rugs. That room is full of rugs. There's no. I don't have any bolo tie material. It's all rugs. Yeah, I didn't get invited to the monthly potlucks. Actually, I think because people knew, and that was fine.
Man, they missed out on your egg salad.
Yeah,
You would have made a mean spinach dip. They would have loved it.
Yeah.
It's just sad. Yeah.
But
Actually, real quick, just fast question, real fast.
yes,
Potluck. What are you bringing?
booze.
Okay. Primary. What about
potluck?
food?
Turkish street food. No lu pilav. A nuggety pilav.
Nice, cool.
Standard, classic,
Great.
meaty, cheap, fun.
All right, awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Continue your.
That's what I look for in a significant other as well.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, dude. Dylan, you've had too much bourbon. You're starting to kind of get a little spicy.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Anyway,
keep going.
What were we saying? There's a bolo tie.
Yeah.
I started making these bolo ties, and then accidentally I started getting into rocks. Like against all odds, I just was like kind of amped. I would look at a rock and think like, wow, I wouldn't have expected that to come out of that.
So
I wonder.
that's kind of a nerd ass thing to.
Yeah. I was embarrassed.
Honestly,
it's hard for me to admit. I don't tell people.
You're brave to come on this podcast and say it.
It's because Jane overheard some rock tumblers.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not really a public hobby.
Yeah.
I do this in the back room of my warehouse.
She was like, "What's this? Like, what sounds like a waterfall of rocks back there?"
I don't know. It might be the 6 tumblers. 6 barrels of tumbling rock.
So I guess the real question I have is, I feel like we should go from the ground floor on this.
Sure.
Because I imagine our audience, unless they're a 75-year-old hippie woman who's also a librarian, knows anything about rock tumbling.
Yeah.
All right. So you get just basically, if I'm understanding this, you just get literally just rocks, like dirty gray, just rocks.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And through some sort of alchemical process.
Nice.
Right? Describe the alchemical process.
I would be happy
What
to.
are we doing to make sure that these rocks reveal their true colors to us, the consumer of the bolo tie?
The ostensible bolo tie. The product.
Yeah.
The bolo tie, on some levels, not an afterthought, but it's like,
yeah.
I just wanted to see what those rocks were going to look like.
Display the rock.
Yeah. Okay, so I'd like to just open by introducing you to an adage of the rock tumbling community.
Oh, okay.
A community of which I consider myself very much
r/rock tumbling.
Yeah.
Or would it be r/rock tumbling?
YouTube. Rock tumbling YouTube is absolutely incredible.
Is it the people I described as the 75-year-old hippies, or is it kind of like, are there young people injecting some youth into the rock tumbling
Not
community?
A lot of those.
Yeah. But be that. You can market yourself. You know?
I could be the hip young face of.
I'm under 85. And I rock tumble.
No, but I mean, the people that tumble rocks are dedicated in a way that I think is incredible. And rock tumbling YouTube is wonderful. I mean, it's very moving for its absolute and complete lack of irony.
Yeah.
Like it's
interesting.
It's,
yeah. Incredible sincerity.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Interesting.
My favorite account is one run. The name of the account is Michigan Rocks.
Nice.
And
it does.
Yes.
Damn straight.
Spot the line, baby.
Yeah.
But the guy, he wears a Michigan shirt.
Yeah.
And he shows you how he tumbles rocks. And he loves it.
I imagine he's within like a few hours of us.
We could meet that man.
Bring him on, dude.
Yeah. Bring on Michigan Rocks. Actually, honestly, we should probably bring on Michigan Rocks.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So the process, well, anyway, the adage here is trash in equals trash out.
Yeah.
So the quality of the rocks that go in, that's going to determine the quality of the rocks that come out.
Yeah.
Early on, I would just tumble rocks that I found on the ground.
Yeah.
And if you have rocks that are of differing hardnesses, then they will never actually be able to complete the process because one will be continually breaking as it hits another. So you have to become familiar with the hardness of various rocks and then ensure that you're only putting rocks of a similar hardness into the tumbler. Now, that was a lot for me to just do as an amateur rock tumbler.
Yeah, I imagine. How does one pick up a rock and think, I can discern its hardness?
Exactly,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I didn't do that. I found a guy in California who happens to live on an outcropping of jasper.
Yeah.
And you pay him some cash, and he fills, literally just gets a flat rate box from USPS and fills it with rocks from his backyard and ships it to you.
I bet the USPS is so pissed.
They're not making money on that.
Okay, this is
Totally. You get this box and it's
like,
so heavy.
Yeah, it's like somebody be like, "What is this box filled of?"
Okay.
Rocks?
Yeah, exactly. But what a brilliant use for the flat rate box. So I get a box. So you get a box of pre-selected similar hardness rocks.
Premium
Yeah,
rocks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If it's all the same, it can be soft, it can be hard, as long as it's all the same. And then you throw that into a tumbler and you start the process.
Yeah.
All you do with the rock tumbler is, in a way, what like rocks in a river or rocks on the beach, what they undergo over thousands and thousands of years is bits of smaller rock rubbing against the rock and polishing away the hard bits of the rock.
Yeah.
So
you're basically creating the black macaroni.
yeah,
You're
yeah.
doing the
Yes.
Turkish bath.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's beautifully said. Yes. So
So actually, real question is: do you have detritus? Like, do you have stuff you have to get rid of?
yes, slurry as it's called. Yeah.
Slurry,
Yeah.
okay.
So,
Not drinkable.
no, and you can't even pour it into your sink.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you do, it will clog the sink because you've got to use this grit.
The forbidden milkshake. as it were.
Exactly.
You have to go out to the street and pour it into the public grate.
Into the storm drain.
Yeah. Where else am I gonna put it? It'll ruin your plumbing. I don't know.
Yeah.
This is something I should get on YouTube and figure out what other people do with
Did you see
it.
that folk that person I don't know that person who had like a Etsy concrete art small business who was pouring excess concrete down their sink. Wow. They're like, what the hell? Why did this break my?
It just exact. Yeah.
So, but slurry, I assume, is similar. I mean, that kind of makes sense,
right? Because it's just so you add grit. You put all the rocks into a barrel and add grit. And this grit is just like a sort of chemical material of decreasing size as you work up. So the big grit breaks off all the big parts of the rock, and then you break up, do finishing, and then finally, in the very last step, it's an extremely fine grit.
Yeah,
and
sort of like sandpaper.
Exactly. Yeah. And the bits of rock that it winds up breaking off are so small that if they settle, they'll just clog. And so basically what you're doing is moving a set of rocks from here to here to here to here, 4 stages, breaking off more and more rock. But according to my calculations, because it's important to keep records. If you're tumbling rocks.
No, he spends a lot of time in Turkey. Bureaucracy is important.
Right. The rocks lose about a third of their volume from here to here.
So that's the big question for me. Is I always imagined it was just a polishing process. It's a actual breaking apart process.
Right. You're just cutting that rock down, and in the process revealing the intricate beauties within it. And I'll tell you right now, it's a little bit addicting.
Yeah.
You look at an ugly little rock, and you take it out after the first thing, and you begin to see this like beauty in it. And it's beautiful. It's sort of backed up for me with a lot of the theological study.
Yeah.
That
So I was
did.
going to say that I feel like you can extrapolate.
Totally.
Yeah.
So I
was about to say, can you apply the same principle to people?
If you beat them up enough, they will.
Exactly.
That's actually what the Book of Job is about.
Tumbling. No, it is true. I mean, it's got come on.
Yeah.
No, it backed up super well because there was the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul. Rocks feature very prominently. So they have ancient authors will talk a lot about the icons there, but they're no real. I mean, there's several icons, but not a lot.
Yeah.
What there are rocks, and this reflects a sort of 7th to 8th century Constantinopolitan theology of physical items having a logos within them.
Yeah.
And the human person being the agent whose job it was, being himself endowed with this logos, this capacity.
Yeah.
To like go to, so the human is both sensible and spiritual, and therefore can go to the sensible world and connect it to the spiritual world by way of his rational faculties.
Yeah.
So one way that this was done was by going to rocks, right?
Yeah.
You would a guy who really knew rocks would find a really cool slab of marble, and he would say, okay, we're gonna take a strand of silk and we're gonna position it like this. And then 2 guys would stand there with a strand of silk in their hand and go like this in a stream for the size of slab at the Hagia Sophia, 5 years.
Yeah.
And if that guy really knew his rocks, when they opened it up, there would be like a design on the inside, like a beautiful, cool design. Mm-hmm. And there was an understanding, and the Hagia Sophia is full of this. The walls are full of this. But there was an understanding that that man, by engaging with the world in that way, was doing the thing that human beings were meant to do.
So I guess how does this relate to? And you're an Orthodox Christian, so I suppose you're more in tune with this. But how does this relate to the Orthodox interpretation of the icon as an object? Right? Is there? Would you say that there's a very strong link between object and because the icon is a window to heaven, right? So does that apply to also rock, right? Are we talking about the physical object as a reflection of the divine, right? Is that what you're describing?
Well, yeah, it's almost like maybe when I think of the icon, it's important in Orthodox theology that like the respect paid to the image passes through the image to the prototype.
Yeah.
Right. So the image is it's a personal presence, but it bespeaks the presence of something behind it.
I'm going to warn you. You're in a room with 2 OPC members who are iconoclastic to the nth degree.
Orthodox.
True. We can resonate from that perspective.
No. I think come on. What's your problem?
I'm not a part of that contingency.
Orthodoxy, hell yeah.
Yeah. I love it when my doctrine is straight. We can all agree on that. So, but I think that the most important part of like the theology of the icon involves the person, and the person what is a saint but somebody who has attained like personhood, right? In the full sense, sort of expressed what it means to be a human person, which means on some level to be a reflection of the logos, right? So I think that there's a sense with a rock, even silly as this is, like if there is a kind of personal presence within the rock, that's the logos, which in Constantinopolitan theology, it's like, the logos, Christ, is reflected since all creation was made through the word of God, through the logos of God. All of creation is going to contain that logos. And for the human person to use his logos here, meaning reason, to engage with that item, you are therefore, in a way, personalizing or making personal what is a merely sensible object. And to Maximus Confessor, that's it. The human person exists in order to bridge a series of gaps, right, between like the sensible and the spiritual, a number of other ones. But this is a way that you can do it. You like personalize space, through your knowledge of the rock in this case.
Well, and I feel like that gives a lot of, legitimacy to the craftsman or to the person who interacts with the materials.
Totally,
right?
That adds a level of spirituality to it that often is in the modern day completely disconnected.
Because we've made spirituality a matter of the intellect over and against some other sort of thing.
I mean, what was the near century of the creation of Notre Dame other than just like kind of a great work of worship?
Right.
And the Hagia Sophia is a good example.
Totally.
Of this as well.
Constructed in 5 years, and for those 5 years of its construction, there were choirs of monks that never stopped singing. Right, as was going up, because it was just understood that this craft is a holy thing, right?
So there's
it's cool.
It is very cool. And so
I think this way about rugs. If I can, like, I
no, that's what I was going to ask. Is kind of to
this
make
is
that
why I
application.
love these rugs.
Yeah.
Because you can look at a rug. I had this one rug that a mom used to train her daughter on how to make rugs. So what you would do is take bits of yarn and you would just try to make perfect squares, right? So mom makes one, daughter makes one. Mom makes one, daughter makes one.
Yeah.
And on one side, great. Square. Crazy, weird, bad square.
Yeah.
Great, you know? And as it goes, you can watch as she gets better.
Yeah.
And by the end, you can't tell who made which square. And there's something about having that in your home.
Yeah.
There's a human being there. I don't know. Like, there's nobody else owns that rug.
It's so easy to disconnect yourself from those that produce whatever item you have in your home,
Totally.
that you're using, right? Like, I mean, one of the things that we try to do in my wife and I's home is have art that people that we know have produced, right? You know, so that there's that additional connection.
Totally.
But at the same time, you're getting art from, and we have this in our home, art from the thrift store, from people that we do have no connection with, spiritual or otherwise. You know, that is a part of our living space, right? It's, ideally, you would have something that you would feel a personal connection with, right? Outside of just the fact that it lives in your personal space.
At the same time, though, you know, even if you don't have that interaction directly, based on what he's saying, you know, you can kind of read into the nature of the object.
Yeah, I agree, but I think it's a lot harder depending on the object, right? Like, I think that, you know, and this might be crazy to say, but you could walk into... Whoa. So this is a little edgy.
We're talking about how God's in rocks. So I don't know. I'm not sure if you're going to be that crazy.
So if you walk into a museum and you see a piece of art, right, like you can walk up to that and you can in some ways identify the individual, right, or perceive the individual through the art. Exactly. But at the same time, right, like... I think from an academic perspective, people have become so separated from it, right? It's like, I'm going to view this purely as the work, right? Not attached to the author whatsoever. Same thing with literature, right? You get the death of the author is a very prevalent perspective when it comes to
I knew you were going to do that. That's a classic Dylan hop right there.
I hate that perspective. I do. And so, you know, that personal connection is completely gone, right? It's disconnected.
The death of the author, though, I think is a little different, and I don't know if
I mean, I would say you could apply the same logic to art, and I believe many do.
The death of the author is more kind of related to like the way that you analyze the work.
No, I mean, again, if you are in, I mean, what is analysis if not a more academic perspective on just perceiving what you're getting, right? You know, and applying it to academic, you know, philosophies or thought processes. And I don't know. Even a piece of art that's in your home, even if you're viewing it from a purely, you know, emotional perspective, right? I think a lot of people still just completely disconnect it from the person that made the thing. Right. You know, again, I've got art in my home that I look at, and I have no sense of the person that created it. Right? Like no appreciation for them, even. Like, to be honest, right? I don't like look at it and be like, I'm glad that somebody took the time to make this piece of art, you know, regardless of how much I appreciate it, right? And so, I think that disconnect just grows stronger, and, you know, being able to establish a baseline of like, okay, so it's important that I do acknowledge that a person made this, right? And put some of themselves within it, right? And then viewing it from that perspective. I don't know. I mean, that might be crazy to say, but...
Well, no, I think about it in the context of the rugs that I frequently, you know, you get a rug in, and I don't know who made it. I know it, but I know a human made it. And the thing that I tend to like is when I reflect on the fact that, like, the person who made this rug lived 80 or 90 years ago in a place totally unlike where I live, and believed things that I don't necessarily believe. You know, we are on some level. Are kind of mutually unintelligible. And yet, the rug, there's something so cool about the rug because it brings us together, right? You too think this is beautiful, right? There's something about some sort of like universal human appreciation. Or
I have actually a quick question about sort of, and I don't know if this might be a weird tangent, but is there a specific Eastern worldview that would put a piece of art on the floor, right? Because in my mind,
to be trodden upon,
right? Because in the West, you know, we put everything up on the walls, right? Of beauty,
totally.
Right? You know, and like there is of course a rug making tradition in the West, but there's a much more personal, artistic element to Eastern rugs.
Yeah.
Like the classic example, of course, and I'm sure you've heard this a million times, but the Afghanistan 9/11 rugs, right?
Oh, yeah,
Where it's like this is our life, this is what we're experiencing.
Right.
I'm putting AK-47s on a rug,
Totally,
right?
totally.
And of course, for edgy teenagers,
We got a couple of those.
Yeah, that's cool. No, I love.
Keep posted.
No, those are I really
Yeah, they're
appreciate those.
interesting.
They're
They're
very
super
interesting.
interesting,
But there's like a desire to kind of create an artistic expression of personal experience. And not just a cool pattern, not houndstooth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's something that's very specific to the person. And they're like, this is something I'm stepping upon. This is something that is going to be used to decorate my floor of all places.
Yeah. I think there is a different sense, at least my experience was like, the domestic space, one does not wear shoes in, for instance. So like even the tradition of going to the mosque and removing one's shoes, like if you are in a certain kind of space, you don't have shoes, which at the get-go means that the floor is a place that can be used for art because you're not wearing it down in the same kind of way.
Yeah. And plus, like the primary act of, the spiritual act of Islam is performed on the floor.
Well, originally, the prayer rugs are famously associated with Islam, but that's even before that, an element of Armenian Christianity was the use of the prayer rug, right? So the rug's been a part of our, sort of shared cultural experience for a long time. But one thing I would say is, if you want to call them this, Westerners and even Americans have imported rugs since they began trade. There are some of the earliest Western style portrait art in the American colonies depict Turkish rugs, right? Identifiable Turkish rugs.
Yeah.
And I think because people, there's always been this kind of understanding that that mode of art is a mode of art that is desirable. Or to say the same thing differently, like if you've got beautiful stuff, I think often about like the walls of a space. If one wall is full of just like things you taped, it doesn't matter how nice the rest are if one surface is gross.
So I feel like we kind of got to the point now. I don't know how long have we been going? 56. Okay, so very quickly, we got to get a question in.
Okay. So I want to say a thank you to our patrons of the show, specifically Joe Papalardo, Sammy Roberts, and Mom and Dad for their major contributions to the show. At the $10 tier, you're able to ask questions of us and the guests.
Yeah.
So we've got some questions. One from Joe Papalardo, who's just asking, what's your favorite story about the West Bank?
My favorite story about the West Bank is a party we threw there.
Oh wow, this is going to be interesting.
And it was the concept of the party. We threw a Molotov cocktail party, and everybody had to come dressed as their favorite revolutionary, right?
Yeah.
And
I imagine just because Che Guevara is such an easy costume, you got a lot of Che Guevara.
Right. Yeah, we got some. I think the best costume. There was a group of people that came. They were all dressed in the traditional iconography of various Greek gods.
Yeah.
And when we were doing the judging element of the evening, they all went outside. They brought us all outside.
Yeah.
And then the guy, there was a guy who's dressed as the sun.
Yeah.
And then all of the people dressed as as Venus and as Mercury, they all revolved around the sun, and they were the Copernican revolution.
Interesting.
That's great.
Wildly geeky, but just an incredible party.
So just for everybody's everybody at home who isn't a Hillsdale College alum, the West Bank is a house.
Yeah.
This was not a party that was thrown in the actual
West Bank of the Middle East.
Right.
Actually, we got a question from Sammy Roberts, and I know these are from the highest tier, the people who are asking these questions, but people who are at much lower tiers can ask questions as well. But Sammy Roberts asked, so what are some of your best finds? Because I know Gage Goods has kind of expanded into books.
Yeah.
Right. And you've worked with.
I was about to read this. Just now.
Worked with.
Let me read it word for word.
Oh, okay.
What is the coolest book you've found when buying different collections of books?
Because on the way here, I was informed you purchased a collection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The biggest collection I've ever bought was the former curator of the Stanford University Museum.
Yeah.
He was married to an East German art critic. I say East German during when they were divided.
Yeah.
And he sold me his entire. He had all these rug books that were super cool and hard to find.
Yeah.
And I asked to just buy those. He had it listed on eBay or something, and he refused to break up the collection. And so it was like, okay, I'll just buy it. I also run a bookstore online. And, and so that collection was just incredible. I mean, just wild stuff. I'm trying to think of some of the coolest things I found. So frequently, that's how I'll do it. I'll find somebody, the former president of the New York Psychoanalytic Society, the gal they would always go to when they wanted a hip quote on Freud. She sold me her collection of books. And so going through these libraries it's so fun. We found an original set of Rorschach tests, like the first publication of the inkblot Rorschach tests in the like sort of government issue size. So I learned how to administer Rorschach tests. Of course.
And then you just, apropos, just sat down and administered it to people that you knew.
Yes, I did. Yes, that's exactly. Yes.
I mean, what else are you
incredible party trick. Yeah. If things are really dragging, you're like, wow. All right.
Let's see what your relationship with your mother's like.
Yeah. There's a card for that. It can get bleak,
I imagine.
I think the most expensive book I ever found was a I think what it was like an Armenian, or not Armenian, but an Aramaic translation of the New Testament. Which was a sort of a cool academic project. Yeah. But it was, I think it sold for I like found it in a basement and it sold for $750, which felt cool. But that's the psychoanalytic library has to be.
That's pretty
gems.
That does. That sounds pretty wild. Is there? I feel like we're kind of out of time here as far as the main episode is concerned. So maybe we'll have to talk about this on Patreon. But I'm very curious to know what you can learn from people's interpretation of shapes. So we shall see. Yeah. Thanks for coming on the show. This has been really pleasant.
Fun.
This has been a ton of fun. Everybody, if you want to hear more, feel free to stick around. If you're on the Patreon, we're going to be recording more. I think that Jane, who is currently gone but should be returning sometime soon, is going to be joining in. So if you had listened to last week's episode, we're kind of doing a double Patreon so that we don't have to sit here for the rest of our lives recording these. But yeah, thanks you so much. And if let people know kind of like where to find you.
How can they get a rug?
Gagegoods.com is my website. And if you have an Instagram, following Gage Goods on Instagram will lead you to a series of painfully constructed
hours of time.
Yeah. So
there's rising actions, there's falling actions.
Right.
It's a 3-act structure.
Yeah, there's a lot of thought that goes into it. But Gage Goods on Instagram without space or anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Thanks for coming on the show. Peace.
Boom.